Most people believe their home is safe until the night it isn't. And when seconds decide whether your family is protected or exposed, waiting for help isn't a plan, it's a gamble. For months on this channel, we've talked about bunkers, shelters, and how to build layers of protection for the worst-case scenario. Those tools matter, and in some situations they can save lives. But here's the uncomfortable truth. If someone breaks into your home while you're sleeping, if the power grid fails and chaos spills into the streets, a bunker in the backyard won't help you in that moment. Because sometimes the danger isn't weeks or months away. It's already inside the walls of your home before you even know it. And when that happens, prevention, not reaction, is your only real weapon. The reality is simple. Most break-ins happen in less than 2 minutes. Most emergency calls take more than 10 to get a response. And most people don't realize how many weaknesses their home has until it's too late. That gap, those few critical minutes when no one is coming to help, is where your preparation will decide what happens next. In this video, we're going to shift focus from bunkers and stockpiles to something far more immediate: how to make your home a fortress long before trouble arrives. We'll examine the most common vulnerabilities that criminals exploit, the mistakes almost everyone makes, and the low-cost upgrades that can turn your home into a hard target. We'll also look at psychological deterrents that work even better than locks, how to prepare for a home invasion scenario, and the mindset that separates victims from survivors. Because preparedness isn't about fear, it's about control. It's about making sure that when the unexpected happens, you and your family are not the softest target on the street. If you want clear, practical strategies to protect what matters most, subscribe to the channel and let's start building your first line of defense right now. Let's start from the very beginning, before locks, before alarms, before anyone ever touches a door handle. Because the truth is, most intrusions don't start with a crowbar, they start with a calculation. Every would-be intruder, whether they're a desperate opportunist or part of an organized group, runs through the same mental checklist long before they step onto your property. Their goal isn't heroism, it's risk reduction. They're looking for the softest possible target, the one that promises the least resistance and the fastest exit. And if you understand how that calculation works, you can interrupt it before they ever decide to test your defenses. The first rule of that mindset is time. Security experts often talk about the 3-minute rule. If a break-in takes more than 3 minutes, most burglars will abandon it. That's why the majority of residential break-ins happen through points of least resistance: flimsy front doors, sliding patio entries, garage side doors that are often left unlocked. Intruders aren't looking to fight or improvise. They're betting that your home is as unprepared as most are. And statistically, they're usually right. The second part of their logic is visibility. Burglars love silence and cover. They prefer approaches that are shielded from the street, narrow side yards, back alleys, areas hidden by tall shrubs or fences. They watch for windows that give them a view of valuable items inside, for signs that no one is home, for regular routines they can predict, a car that always leaves at 8 a.m., a porch light that never turns off, a spare key hidden under the doormat, something that half of American homeowners still do. All of it builds a profile, and that profile tells them whether the risk is worth the reward. And then there's what's called OPSEC, operational security, the same principle used by militaries and intelligence agencies, but too often ignored in everyday life. When you post your vacation plans on social media, when you let packages pile up by the door, when you leave tools or ladders outside, you're not just being careless, you're broadcasting opportunity. And opportunity is exactly what predators look for. This is why shifting your perspective is so critical. Most people walk around their property thinking like homeowners, checking for maintenance, not threats. But effective defense requires a different mindset. You have to think like an intruder. Look at your home from the street and ask yourself what they see. Are there shadows or blind spots where someone could move unseen? Are there windows that reveal expensive electronics or valuables? Are there quiet routes, side paths, basement entrances, poorly lit corners that lead straight to your most vulnerable points? A simple 5-point perimeter audit done with an attacker's eyes can expose weaknesses you didn't even know existed. Step across the street and study your home's visibility. Identify any natural cover that could conceal movement. Check how well lit your entrances are after dark. Look for doors or windows that are hidden from neighbors' view. And finally, trace the escape routes, because if you can see how someone might get in and out without being noticed, so can they. The uncomfortable question is this: how many seconds would it take someone right now to bypass your front door? And if the answer is measured in seconds rather than minutes, then the fight to protect your home doesn't start when the alarm goes off. It starts now, before anyone ever crosses the property line. If understanding how intruders think is the first step, the next is even more critical, denying them the fast entry they're counting on. Because in a real break-in, doors and windows aren't background details, they're the battlefield where the first 60 seconds are won or lost. And in that minute, every second you steal back is a second that shifts the odds in your favor. Most people assume their front door is strong because it's heavy or made of metal. But what usually fails isn't the door, it's the hardware that holds it together. A lock is only as strong as the screws anchoring its strike plate to the frame. If they're just a couple of centimeters deep, a single kick can blow the door wide open. But when those screws reach deep into the studs, the same door suddenly resists blow after blow. The same logic applies to hinges. If they're shallow or unsecured, the hinge side becomes the weak point. Reinforce them and add hinge bolts, small steel pins that keep the door locked in place even if the hinges fail, and that vulnerability disappears. A quality deadbolt, rated for real resistance, makes the next layer of forced entry slower, louder, and far riskier. And that's the point. You're not trying to make the door indestructible. You're trying to make breaking it in so time-consuming and noisy that the attacker rethinks the attempt. Sliding doors and windows demand the same mindset. They're often the quietest way in, which is why they're targeted first. A simple metal rod in a sliding track forces an intruder to switch tactics. A layer of security film on glass makes shattering it no longer a single silent strike, but a drawn-out effort that costs precious seconds. None of these upgrades are dramatic. They're not cinematic. They're millimeters, but millimeters that become minutes, and minutes decide outcomes. Of course, strength without safety is a trap. Reinforcements should always allow a quick exit in emergencies like a fire, and every member of the household should know how to operate them. This is about control, building a fortress you can still escape from. A good way to begin is with a simple audit. Take 30 minutes. Look at your front door from the perspective of someone trying to break in. Check how deep the hardware goes into the frame. Test the deadbolt. Then walk to your weakest window or sliding door and ask yourself one question. Could someone get through this in under a minute? If the answer is yes, then the job isn't finished. And in the fight for those first 60 seconds, unfinished is the same as undefended. If reinforced doors and shatter-resistant windows win you time, the next layer of defense is designed to win you something even more valuable: invisibility, or more precisely, undesirability. Because most intruders don't decide to break into a house the moment they see it, they decide long before they ever touch a handle. And that decision is shaped not just by locks and hardware, but by perception. Your goal is simple: make your home look like a problem, a loud, risky, unpredictable problem they'd rather walk past. Criminal psychology is surprisingly predictable. Most burglars aren't thrill seekers. They're opportunists. They look for patterns that suggest easy. A dark side yard, a bush-shaded window, a silent porch where no motion light ever snaps on. If they see those signs, they assume the rest of your defenses are weak too. But if the approach is well lit, the ground underfoot makes noise, and the house shows clear signs of active occupancy, their internal risk calculator starts flashing red. One of the most effective principles you can borrow is called CPTED, Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. It's a security concept used by police and urban planners, but you can apply it to your home in simple, low-cost ways. Lighting is the first and most obvious. Darkness is an intruder's ally, so break it up. Use motion-activated floodlights to cover entry points, but avoid predictable symmetry. Light that turns on unexpectedly, or from an odd angle, sends a powerful signal. This property is active, monitored, and not worth the risk. Sound is another underrated weapon. A layer of noisy gravel under key access paths, especially those hidden from street view, can betray an intruder's approach before they're anywhere near a door. So can a strategically placed gate latch, a wind chime, or a dog warning sign that may or may not be true. Even uncertainty itself is a barrier. Physical obstacles work too. Thorny or dense shrubs planted beneath vulnerable windows don't just make entry painful, they force an intruder to slow down, and slowing down is the last thing they want to do. Place them where someone would have to climb or crouch, and you've added another layer of deterrence without spending a dime on tech. The same logic applies to visual cues. A credible security system sign, even if it's a decoy, introduces doubt. A camera, real or dummy, placed in plain sight does the same. But the most powerful deterrent of all is evidence of active presence. A pair of muddy boots by the door, a porch light on a randomized timer, a visible package pickup note removed daily. These are small details, but they all tell the same story. Someone's paying attention, and no criminal wants attention. This is where a mental exercise becomes incredibly useful. Step outside and map your home from the intruder's point of view. Start at the street and trace the path they would take to get to each entry point. What do they see? Where do they pause? Where could they approach unseen? Then, mark 3 places where you could introduce doubt, noise, or discomfort, a light, a sound, a barrier, and add them. Each one will quietly push the risk-reward balance against them. Remember, deterrence isn't about winning a fight. It's about making sure the fight never happens. And if your property communicates trouble before anyone even sets foot on it, most intruders will never bother testing what's behind the door. Physical deterrence and psychological barriers are powerful, but in the 21st century, they're only half the fight. The other half is intelligence, systems that see, hear, and warn you before someone touches the door. And contrary to what most people assume, that doesn't require a monthly subscription or a 4-figure budget. It requires design, creativity, and above all, strategy. Because technology alone doesn't protect you. Cameras, sensors, and apps are only tools, and tools without a plan tend to fail precisely when you need them most. The real mission of a smart security layer is simple: time and information. Think of it as building a house that speaks softly before it ever needs to scream. Start with vision. One well-placed camera watching your main entryway is worth more than 5 showing irrelevant corners. And if money is tight, improvise. An old smartphone with a free app can stream a live feed and push motion alerts to your pocket. Add 1 or 2 visible dummy cameras and you'll multiply deterrence without multiplying cost. Then, give that vision something to listen with. Cheap magnetic sensors on doors and windows trigger alerts the instant contact is broken. Pair them with a basic battery-powered siren, and you've created a warning layer that can wake you, scare off an intruder, or alert the neighbors before the situation escalates. But none of that matters if the system goes dark. Power cuts, storms, even civil unrest, any of them can turn expensive gear into useless plastic. That's why redundancy is the next rule. A small UPS backup for your router and security hub can keep your network alive long enough to capture crucial footage or send alerts when the grid fails. Communication is where smart systems separate themselves from cheap gimmicks. Most devices today allow you to define zones. A package on the porch might trigger a discrete notification, while motion near the back door at 2 a.m. should set off alarms and lights. That level of precision turns your security network into an extension of your own awareness, not a source of endless false positives. And if there's one principle that matters more than any other, it's resilience. A camera offline, a sensor still warns you. Power down, the UPS keeps the network breathing. Internet out, a local alarm still buys you time. Each layer is a second chance to act before events spiral out of control. Here's a simple way to make it real. Sketch a map of your home and mark 3 things: where you see with cameras, where you sense through entry points, and how you respond using lights, alarms, and notifications. Begin with the front door and the weakest point, then expand step by step. The objective isn't perfection on day 1, it's a system that evolves and keeps working even when things go wrong. Because in the end, smart security isn't about gadgets, it's about control. And the gap between a house that's merely watched and one that's truly aware can mean the difference between a false alarm and a life-changing event. Even the smartest security system is only as strong as the story your house tells when you're not there. And this is where even well-prepared homeowners make their biggest mistake. They treat absence as a pause in security, when in reality it's the moment their home is most exposed. Because for an intruder, an empty house isn't a challenge, it's an invitation. Your mission is simple but critical. Erase every sign of vacancy and replace it with signals of life. That means practicing OPSEC, operational security, not in a military sense, but in the most domestic and practical way possible. Start with what intruders notice first: neglect. Packages piling up by the door or an overflowing mailbox are like neon signs that say, "No one's home." Before you leave, pause deliveries or redirect them to pick up lockers, and ask a trusted neighbor to collect your mail if you'll be away for more than a few days. Then build the illusion of presence. Lights on timers are a start, but predictable patterns betray you. A lamp that clicks on at exactly 7 p.m. and off at 11 p.m. is almost as revealing as leaving the house dark. Use smart plugs or variable timers to inject randomness, different rooms on different days, irregular intervals that suggest real movement inside. The same logic applies to vehicles. A car that hasn't moved in a week tells a story you don't want told. Coordinate with neighbors to shift its position occasionally, or let someone park in your driveway. A little unpredictability goes a long way. Your digital life matters just as much. A vacation selfie posted in real time, a voicemail announcing you're out of town, even a quick story saying 2 weeks away. All of these erase the ambiguity you're working so hard to create. Delay your posts until you're home and keep messages neutral. If someone calls, they shouldn't be able to tell whether you're on the couch or across the country. Technology can strengthen this deception if used strategically. A simple geofencing setup can trigger lights, blinds, or even a radio when your phone leaves a certain radius, creating subtle signs of activity without any extra effort. Paired with the cameras and sensors from previous layers, this builds a passive defense system that adapts automatically to your absence. But the real game is played at the invisible level, perception management. Criminals don't pick targets at random. They weigh risk against reward based on what they think they see. A home that looks occupied, unpredictable, and connected to its surroundings becomes high risk and low reward, and that perception can be built entirely in your absence. Before you go, run a final check. Deliveries paused, mailbox empty, lights randomized, vehicles moved, geofencing active, social media silent. It's not about theatrics, it's about uncertainty. Because certainty is what criminals exploit. Ambiguity is what keeps them away. All the locks, lights, and cameras in the world exist for one reason: to buy you time. But when that time runs out, when the sound downstairs isn't the wind but footsteps, theory ends, and only a plan matters. Up to now, we've focused on how to stop threats before they reach you. But real preparedness demands an answer to one question before anything happens. What will you do in the first 60 seconds after a breach? Because in that window, hesitation kills and clarity saves lives. The visible layer of that clarity starts with a safe room, not a Hollywood-style panic bunker, but a realistic, reinforced space built around three principles: delay, communication, and survival. Pick a room with a solid core door, strong hinges, and a single entry point you can lock from the inside. Keep it simple but functional. A flashlight, a first aid kit focused on bleeding control, and a backup way to breathe if the room needs to stay sealed. Above all, communication is non-negotiable. A charged phone, or better, a prepaid one capable of calling emergency services even without an active plan, ensures you're not cut off if Wi-Fi fails or power is down. Coordination is the next layer, and it's where most families fail. Everyone should know exactly what to do the instant an alarm sounds or a breach is suspected. That starts with a code word, one clear signal that triggers action, not confusion. When it's spoken, there's no debate. Everyone moves to the pre-agreed location. Once inside, sequences everything. Call emergency services first. Then, if possible, notify a trusted neighbor and trigger any panic alerts built into your system. If the intruder attempts to breach the safe room, you must already know your fallback options, secondary exits, escape routes, or defensive positions. Those choices cannot be improvised in the moment. But a plan written on paper isn't a plan, it's a theory. And theory doesn't save lives, practice does. Once a month, run a 10-minute drill. Time how long it takes everyone to reach the safe room. Assign roles, who calls 911, who secures the door, who grabs the medical kit. Then pressure test the plan. What if the phone is dead? What if the power is cut? What if you're separated when it happens? Each scenario deserves a rehearsed answer. The deeper purpose of this process isn't just survival, it's eliminating panic. In a crisis, fear feeds on uncertainty. But when every action is pre-decided and every role understood, fear loses its grip and execution takes over. That's the final evolution of real home defense. Decisions made in advance that turn chaos into choreography when seconds matter most. All the preparation in the world means nothing if it leads you to cross a line you don't understand. Because the line between defense and liability, between protecting your home and facing criminal charges, is often far thinner than most people realize. And when adrenaline takes over and instinct kicks in, that is not the moment to start learning the law. Everything we've discussed so far, from reinforcing doors to building a safe room, falls under deterrence and passive defense. These actions reduce risk without escalating the situation. But the moment you introduce force, a weapon, a physical confrontation, or a trap, you step into a very different legal and ethical landscape. And that landscape changes dramatically from state to state. The first rule is non-negotiable. Know the law where you live. Castle doctrine and stand your ground are phrases thrown around online, but they don't mean the same thing everywhere. In some states, you must prove you tried to retreat before using force. In others, the mere presence of an intruder doesn't justify lethal action unless an immediate threat exists. Get that wrong, and a moment of self-defense can turn into a criminal trial. The second principle, never use traps. Devices designed to injure, from simple tripwires to elaborate booby traps, are almost always illegal, even if intended to protect your property. Courts have consistently ruled that the right to defend your home does not extend to indiscriminate hazards that could harm intruders, first responders, or anyone else. A locked door is legal. A shotgun wired to fire when it opens is not. Third, document everything. Reinforced doors, security cameras, alarm settings, keep records, photos, timestamps, installation notes. After an incident, write down what happened, when, and how you responded. These details can establish context and intent if your actions are ever questioned in court. But legality is only half the equation. The invisible layer, the one that separates a responsible defender from a reckless one, is discipline. Real strength isn't about how far you're willing to go. It's about knowing precisely where to stop. Your goal isn't revenge, it's preservation of your life, your family's, and even the intruders if the threat is no longer present. That's why a sound defensive posture rests on three principles. First, escalation is the last resort. Every barrier you build exists to prevent confrontation, not provoke it. Second, clarity beats improvisation. Decide beforehand under what conditions you would use force and understand the legal justification so you don't make a catastrophic mistake in the heat of the moment. Third, the aftermath matters. What you do after an incident, cooperating with police, presenting documentation, choosing your words carefully, can be just as important as what you did during it. Because in the end, preparedness isn't about turning your home into a battlefield, it's about ensuring it never becomes one. And in that mission, discipline, not aggression, is the most powerful weapon you have. Everything we've covered, from deterrence psychology to legal discipline, leads to a single truth. Security isn't something you buy, it's something you build. And the strongest systems don't appear overnight. They evolve layer by layer, step by deliberate step. But building that system doesn't require months of work or a massive budget. In fact, one of the most meaningful upgrades you can make takes less time than watching a movie. Think of it as the 30-minute fortress sprint, a focused burst of action that turns theory into reality today, not someday. Because the biggest mistake people make is treating security as a future project, and future projects rarely happen. Start with the first and most exploited entry point, the front door. Check the strike plate. If the screws are short, replace them with 7 or 8 centimeter ones. It's a 5-minute job that can add precious seconds to an intruder's timeline. Reinforce the hinges with longer screws too, closing another weak spot. Then turn to glass. Choose the most exposed or hidden window and apply a basic security film, cheap, fast, and enough to turn a single smash into a noisy, time-consuming struggle. Once the physical points are stronger, add awareness. One motion-activated light in the right place, a dark approach path, a back door, can break an intruder's confidence before they even touch the lock. Layer sound on top of that. A simple battery-powered alarm on a door or window changes the equation in seconds. Loud, disorienting, and often enough to make a criminal abandon the attempt. Finally, activate the human layer. A short conversation with a trusted neighbor, a quick agreement to check in if something seems off, is one of the most overlooked and effective deterrents you can build. These steps require no special skills, no expensive gear, and no elaborate planning. But together, they transform a house from easy target to high risk, and shift your mindset from passive to prepared. And that shift is where real security begins. Because the fortress sprint isn't the end of the journey, it's the foundation. The most resilient defense grows over time. Today, you reinforce the door and add light. In a week, you improve window locks, add a camera, or extend sensor coverage. In a month, you finish a safe room, integrate geofencing, or run a full emergency drill. Each layer builds on the one before it. Each small action compounds into something far greater. And the real power of this approach isn't just in the hardware you install, it's in the confidence that grows with each improvement. Every screw tightened, every sensor added, every plan rehearsed erodes uncertainty and replaces it with capability. And capability is what turns fear into control. So don't wait for the perfect system. Don't wait for a close call to force your hand. Your fortress begins the moment you decide to build it, and 30 minutes is all it takes to start. All the layers we've built, from reinforced doors to digital sensors, from psychological deterrence to emergency drills, share one purpose: to buy you time. Every barrier you add, every second you delay an intruder, increases the odds that danger never crosses your threshold. But true security has a paradox. The stronger your defenses become, the easier it is to let your guard down. And that's the moment when strength turns into weakness. A fortress is not a thing you finish, it's a system you maintain. The way to know if yours is working isn't by how it looks, but by how it performs. 3 numbers reveal everything: detection time, resistance time, and response time. Detection time is how quickly you're alerted when something is wrong. Resistance time is how long your physical barriers hold before they're breached. Response time is how fast your family can execute the plan once the alarm is triggered. If those three numbers improve over time, you're building real security. If they stagnate or slip, you're just surrounding yourself with accessories. This is where prevention becomes more powerful than any gadget or lock. Most of what real security achieves will never make the news, never appear on a police report, never even be noticed, because it stops threats before they begin. A motion light that changes a burglar's mind. A reinforced door that convinces them to walk away. A house that doesn't look empty when you're gone. What doesn't happen is the real victory. And that brings us to the question that matters most. The real measure of home defense isn't how safe you feel tonight. It's how many minutes your home will give you when safety is no longer a feeling, but a fight. If you had to rely on your home for 5 minutes tonight, would it hold? Tell us in the comments.